Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world, one book at a time. What's so incredible about this novel is how it reveals that inherited faith can actually function as a system for passing down historical trauma. And that matters, right? Because it shows us in really vivid detail how the wounds of the past, well, they become the rules for the future. So Go Tell It on the Mountain, this was actually James Baldwin's debut novel. It's this semi-autobiographical story that takes place over just a single day in 1930s Harlem, and it's all seen through the eyes of a 14-year-old boy, John Grimes. But here's the thing. His entire world, everything he knows, is governed by this incredibly powerful, all-encompassing system, his family's storefront church, called the Temple of the Fire Baptized. Okay, so this really brings us to the core question we're going to dig into here. We're using Baldwin's novel as a kind of case study, to unpack the hidden system that answers this really powerful question. How do old wounds become the rules for the future? All right, let's start by looking at the structure of the world in this book. We're not just looking at the religious community as, a simple backdrop. No, we're framing it as an active, governing system, something with its own logic and its own purpose. And at the heart of this is a concept we're calling inherited faith. You can almost think of it like a complete operating system for life. Seriously, it gives you a whole structure of belief, a really strict moral code that tells you what's right and wrong, and it hands you this powerful lens that shapes how you see not only yourself, but also the hostile world outside. But here's the twist in this novel. This system's main job, it isn't just about passing down beliefs. It's about passing down the unresolved pain of the past. The trauma of the older generation, well, that becomes the inheritance for the next one. So this is the crucial part, the mechanism at the center of it all. The system works by turning suffering into a moral obligation. Think about it. All that historical trauma from slavery, the pain of migration, even the personal sins of the older folks, all of it gets processed by the system and comes out the other side as this rigid, inescapable set of duties for the kids. And this quote, wow, it just captures that cycle perfectly. We see it through John's stepfather, Gabriel. You see all of his past sins, all the burdens he inherited from his own family's history. They get channeled into this really harsh, unforgiving piety. His personal pain literally becomes religious law. And that just keeps the cycle going, a cycle where suffering is never healed. Instead, it's made holy and then passed down. Okay, so like any system, this one has clear rules. And these rules create what you could call a moral enclosure, a space that, both protects you and traps you at the same time. Let's break down how it works. The whole system basically runs on this powerful push and pull dynamic. On one hand, the incentives are huge, right? You get the promise of salvation, the safety of a community, a feeling of holy power when the world makes you feel powerless. But the constraints are just as intense. You're living under the constant threat of sin, the judgment of everyone around you, the absolute terror of damnation, and this idea that the entire world outside the church is just pure wickedness. And what all this does is create this self-reinforcing feedback loop. It's a cycle. The trauma from the past creates a desperate need for safety. And this rigid faith, it offers that safety. Then that same faith reframes any hardship you face as just a holy test, which basically justifies all the suffering. And the final step, the entire cycle is passed down to the next generation as sacred truth. It guarantees that the trauma is never actually resolved, just reenacted over and over again. So you have to ask, what's the human cost of living inside a system like this? To really get a feel for its effect on a person's identity, let's use a single visual metaphor. Think of it as a narrow passage. All right, so imagine an individual, someone like young John Grimes. He starts out with this wide, open, undefined potential for who he could be. The future is it's an open space. But then comes the weight of inheritance, the family's history, all their trauma, their beliefs. It all starts to build walls around him. And those walls start constricting that open space, forcing all that potential into one very specific direction. Now, to be accepted, to actually belong, your identity has to be forced through that narrow passage. And that passage is defined by the system's rules: submission, public repentance, and just accepting the absolute authority of your father and the church. And the person who comes out the other side, well, they've been fundamentally changed by the incredible pressure of that system. This is the crisis John is facing on the church floor. It's this violent, transformative process of being totally reshaped by the weight of everything he's inherited. So when you take this kind of systems-level view, it really helps you see what's truly going on in the novel. It's not just a story about what people believe. It's about how faith can work as a powerful structure that carries the full, unresolved weight of the past and drops it right into the present moment. And that really changes how we think about inheritance, doesn't it? It's not just some collection of passive heirlooms or old family stories. No, it's an active system. It has its own rules, its own incentives, its own logic, and it's constantly working to shape the lives of the people born into it. And that leaves us with one last question to think about. I mean, if a system this powerful can be hidden inside something as personal as faith, what other systems are we all carrying around? In our families, in our communities, in our cultures, systems we carry without ever knowing where they came from, or even understanding the rules they're making us live by. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.